Let me introduce our panelists. We've got a great crew here tonight. And I'll introduce them and ask each of them a question or two, and then turn it over to all of you if you want to hear what's on your mind. So, to my far right, John Cantor. John holds a Bachelor's of Science in Wildlife Management from Ohio State and a Master's in Ecology from UNH. For 24 years, John worked at the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department, first as the non-game and endangered species wildlife biologist, and then for many years as the supervisor of the non-game and endangered wildlife program, very close partner of ours with Nature Conservancy. And then a couple years ago, year and a half ago,
Yeah.
he became the senior wildlife biologist at the National Wildlife Federation, where he provides support and leadership to national and regional staff and state affiliates on priority fish and wildlife conservation issues. Welcome, John. He lives in Hopkinton with his family, and he says that during his 32 years exploring New Hampshire's woods and wetlands, he's enjoyed duck hunting with his friends, his son, and his Labrador retrievers, some of whom I've had the chance to meet. In the middle is Nancy Howe. Nancy is a self-taught artist who began developing her art seriously back in 1988 from her rural studio in Vermont. Her paintings and oils span a wide range of subjects, from animals and birds to landscapes, still lifes and figures, and they've become part of several permanent museum collections, including the National Museum of Wildlife Art and the Lee Yockey Woodson Art Museum. She's the recipient of many awards, including the Oil Painters of America's Grand Prize, the American National Award of Excellence, and the Realism Award of Excellence Master's Signature Division. But most importantly, for our purposes, in 1990, Nancy made history as the first woman artist to win the federal duck stamp contest. So that's wonderful to have. And just one other thing I wanted to mention, which is back in 2007, Nancy began a fundraising cultural painting project called Painting a Brighter Future for Women, which currently supports programs that empower women in Native communities in Kenya, Bhutan, and Panama, which is really wonderful. So thank you, Nancy, for being here. And then right next to me is Ann Lee Mata. Ann Lee began her career with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service back in 2008 in the Northeast Regional Office in Hadley and came up here from Hadley today. She has worked as the administrative assistant to the Migratory Birds Regional Chief since 2010. She provides support to the entire Migratory Bird staff, works as a grant specialist. She told me earlier today she remembered seeing my name on a bunch of Nature Conservancy grants over the years. And currently one of Ann Lee's roles is to serve as the Junior Duck Stamp Regional Northeast Coordinator. She's passionate about bird conservation, youth engagement, duck stamp art, and supporting the mission of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They're very close and critically important partner of ours. Their mission is to work with others to conserve, protect, and enhance fish, wildlife, plants, and their habitats for the continuing benefit of American people. So thank you for being here, Ann Lee. So I'm going to start with you, Nancy.
Oops.
So of course we're excited to have you here because you actually won this competition. So just tell us a little bit about why you chose to enter the contest, what species to paint you painted, and a little bit about your overall experience.
Okay. I knew nothing about duck stamp, and a friend of mine who was a duck hunter, who knew I was an artist and liked to paint nature subjects, suggested I enter, telling me that it was worth $1 million. And I was pretty young. I could use the money. And the other pull for me was the fact that I was just about to start considering a career in art, and it would give me pretty quick exposure. Once you win the duck stamp, you get invited to a lot of exhibitions that you might take years to get into. It just kind of jump-starts your career. So I chose the King Eider that year, the 3 that we had to choose from, because they were trying to have all the migratory species represented on stamps, and these were ones that had never been featured before. And the other 2 were scoters, and I didn't think they were very interesting to paint from an artistic standpoint. So I picked the king eider, which of course is difficult in another way because they're not a species I could find in Vermont, or at least they might fly through, but they're mostly subarctic. So that took a little more research. I had to go to the Fairbanks Museum in St. Johnsbury to borrow a mount to work from, and I connected with some individuals, professionals in conservation in Canada who gave me material, reference material on what the female looked like because I had a male of the species and the proper habitat. So it was a challenge, but really what got me excited about it was in doing research. I discovered a book by an artist called Robert Verity Clem, and he had done a book on shorebirds that they had a feel to them that I was really inspired by, so that's what I chose. As far as the experience, it was absolutely terrifying, and it was the best year of my life. It was a great opportunity for growth, I'd like to say. It was terrifying. It's like the dog that chases cars, and what do you do when you finally catch it? The problem for me was that I was terrified of public speaking. I was afraid of flying, and I had motion sickness when I was flying. And I'm an introvert, and the whole year and a half was going to be full of public appearances and public speaking and being in crowds. And I remember when they told me I was in that top 5 and to stay around because they were going to let me know if I won or not. And I was crying, I was making deals with the devil and everyone else. But it was an unparalleled opportunity for me, both for my art and just in getting out and meeting. I met some of the most wonderful people, and it did jumpstart my art career, and it was fabulous.
So just want to follow up. You were the first woman to win the contest. More than 50 years after it started, and only 2 women have won since that time. What does that mean to you, and what kind of advice do you have for artists that might be considering entering this contest?
It's interesting because my father passed away before I won, and the whole time I was entering, and I entered 14 years before I won, he kept saying that I was going to be the first woman to win. And I was sorry he wasn't there to see it, but it felt really special to fulfill that for him and for me. I do think it has helped inspire other women. There have always been, when I was entering, there were other women, but I do believe there's more now, and just being able to see this, that a woman wins, is really encouraging. When I won, John Turner was head of Fish and Wildlife, and I found out just maybe in the last several years, his daughter, Catherine Turner, who's now a very well-known artist in her own right, said that I was her inspiration when she was young. She was probably in her early 20s when I won the contest. And so, you know, I see people all the time who say that really encouraged them, people who were entering, to have them continue to submit and not give up. and to other people, it just gave them encouragement to try, to try.
Let me turn to you, Ann Lee. You've got experience on the inside of the competition. Tell us a little bit about the approach, and how do you pick the judges, and what are they really looking for?
Okay, on the judges, they have 5 judges, and they always have an alternate, because you never know if someone's going to miss their flight or get sick at the last minute. But they have a biologist there all the time. They have an artist that's on a panel, and then they have like somebody from Migratory Birds who might be retired at any given, moment. But they're always looking so that they're clearly looking at the habitat, the bird, everything in there. On the back side of it, I've done many details. I think I worked the year that Nancy had won. Going in there, you're opening up all the packages, and it's so strange to see these people that put hours and hours and hours into their work, and it comes in the manila envelope with no packing. Okay, or you open it up and it's all tacky because it's still wet. Okay, it hasn't dried, but it's just so different. And so you have to catalog it, you have to log it all in, then it has to be all scanned for the online stuff. It's so real just to see that whole process. Put it all up online, get it all ready just for this contest, and it's hours and hours and hours of work behind the scenes for this to go off. It's a lot of work.
And you coordinate the Junior Duck Stand competition for New Hampshire and for 13 Northeast states. How does that competition differ from the federal competition?
It kind of mirrors the federal, okay? It's from grades kindergarten through 12. I do the New Hampshire one. They actually send their artwork in. Okay, we have 5 judges in-house at Fish and Wildlife that judge all the artwork. We pick one winner, best of show, that gets sent down to DC. And then they pick a winner from every state. One winner is the national competition winner of that. And New Hampshire had a winner back in 15 that came in 2nd place out of the whole country. So you do have some popular artwork here in this state.
That's great. All right, John, let me pass it over to you if you could. So when you were, you were the supervisor of our non-game and endangered wildlife program for many years. You spent a lot of time thinking about our state's wildlife populations. How are waterfowl and wetlands doing in New Hampshire? Like, what's going well? What are the challenges that you've seen?
Yeah, I think as you saw in the film, waterfowl populations are doing fairly well, and they're one of the really good wildlife success stories. And when I think about New Hampshire and really one of the greatest success stories, wood ducks, were nearly extinct. Over the years, and the intervention that people could do for them was build nesting boxes for them, and that was done on a very large scale at a time when our forests had not regrown to where they are now. And I think of wood ducks as kind of being the, really symbolizing one of the conservation successes for New Hampshire. They depend on, older trees with cavities in them. They often use the cavity that a pileated woodpecker is drilled out in the tree. So they symbolize not only the return of the duck, but the return of our forests as well. We have mallards, recent really arrival. They're our most common duck, but really didn't start showing up here until the 50s. And then the American black duck, which is just kind of a symbol of the eastern wilds in the eastern in the Atlantic coast. So success with the ducks. Our wetlands relatively intact. I think about Ohio, where this contest that was filmed was happening. They lost 90%. That's my home state, and they lost 90% of their wetlands, mostly to agriculture. Here in New Hampshire, depending on who you talk to, it's between 10 and 20% wetland loss. But I think we've done a good job through land conservation and then through the wetlands regulations and now have a very active mitigation program to restore and protect additional wetlands, not just little side pockets here and there, but you know, complexes of wetlands. Places that I can think of, like the Musquash down in Londonderry, where some recent funds have been spent to protect some real quality wetlands, not just for our ducks, but for things like blandings and spotted turtles as well.
So the duck stamp program works because waterfowl hunters buy the stamps, which in turn funds conservation. You're a wildlife biologist, you're a hunter. Some people might feel like those are in conflict. Talk about like those two different facets of your background and how they come together.
Yeah, well, I think at a time in my life, I was certainly felt it in conflict. You know, I kind of grew up in the suburbs of Cincinnati, an animal lover, spending lots of time at the zoo. And I really wasn't exposed to the connection between hunting and conservation until I was an undergraduate student at Ohio State. Still at that time, you had a number of kids coming off the farm that had grown up hunting and fishing that were getting into wildlife programs. So I had exposure through them, through professors, understanding the link between conservation and hunters. And, you know, I think so I graduated, I was kind of interested, I read Aldo Leopold's Sand County Almanac, and he talks about his hunting experiences in there, kind of as the, you know, the founder of my profession. And so as I finished my undergrad, I went to work for the Fish and Wildlife Service in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and I gave it a try, and have just really enjoyed it ever since. I would say the biggest, I'm a birder, I love to look for amphibians or reptiles, just any kind of nature, but I do really feel like the excitement of the waterfowl hunt gets you up out of bed well before sunrise, gets you in camo by the side of the marsh, put you in a situation where you're going to see all kinds of wildlife. And then, you know, when you're there, you feel like a participant. Perhaps not just an observer, but you're really a participant.
All right, I'm going to ask Nancy another question and then turn the mic over to all of you, so get ready.
You asked me a part of a question I didn't answer, which was what advice for people who are interested in submitting. I have one really good piece of advice that took me 14 years to figure out for myself, which is to paint for yourself and not try to paint to win an award, which all these people are doing, for the money, for prestige, for your career, because you really do your best work when you're doing it for yourself, you're doing something you really love. I would say in the beginning I started, I definitely was trying to win for the money, and then later on it was for my art career, and it was after I had entered so many times and I just kind of assumed I would never win, that I said, well, I've got all these old duck stamp entries and what am I going to do with them? So I painted a small piece that looked like something I could sell that didn't look like a duck stamp, and that was the one that won. And I think there's actually been studies about that, and they say as soon as you put a reward in front that's extrinsic, it's not something from within you, you're not working because of your love of the subject,